Thank you, Jane, and I hope my voice will make it for the next 10 or 15 minutes. I won't start with the halalalala. Okay, I did. Yeah, I want to present a little bit the first work we have done in this topic about the common performance metrics. Paul would say it might be the elephant in the room. It's not in the room, it was in our room last week, or the last days. So the area outside, but maybe we can find a different role for this issue of performance metrics. It's clearly the fact that performance metrics and harmonizing performance metrics is a matter also of competition in several sectors. So rating tools are handling that in different ways, and then always harmonizing means coming into some critical points as well. But I think it's solvable, and it's a great value to go in the same direction. What did I prepare? I prepared. What's happening here? No, okay, we have the right word. I prepared a little bit about why benchmarking. So performance. Is it better now? Okay. Performance metrics means to have the basis for benchmarking, because if we have a lot of numbers somewhere and we cannot compare them and cannot aggregate them or use them together, it's nothing worthy in the end. So benchmarking is a real driver for that, and for that we need a common methodology. We have to agree on how to do it. Otherwise, everybody is normalizing in a different way, and then we have the same methods before. And then we have some tasks to do in the committee, and this work just has started. So if we talk about benchmarking, we have different dimensions. What we want to benchmark and how we could benchmark. And if we look into different buildings and type of buildings, we immediately see that they have different use, they have different shape, so everything is different, but they all are buildings, and they all have maybe there's the option to calculate a performance energy consumption, for example, per square meter, but it says nothing. That's clear if you have a church, or you have an industrial building, or if you have a building somewhere in the mountains. The energy used per square meter, it's just a number, it's 42. Even if you look into the same type of building, and here I brought some numbers from residential buildings in Europe, from the building stock, you see that there is a big variance between the different buildings and different type of buildings, and that means you have to think about, or we have to think about, if we want to compare, for example, single-family buildings and high-rise buildings per square meter, or what would be the interpretation of such a comparison? Of course, we can compare and say the one is better than the other, but what does it mean? It's not the only dimension. So if we talk about benchmarking and then talk about having the same level for all the different numbers, beside the different use of the buildings, we have to think about how the building is used. And that means we have to think about, is it populated, the building? Are there people in, or is it just an empty envelope? Because it's easy to have an empty envelope without energy use. But it won't work because there's no use of the building. So we have to talk about vacancy. We have to talk about the climate. Of course the climate is different, but it's trivial to say if it's warmer outside, I need less energy to heat it. It's not a performance metrics for the building. It says something about the region. But if we want to compare the performance of the building, we have to find a way to normalize that to be able to compare the building. And we see the same type of buildings in some sectors all over the world. In an office, for example, we see the same buildings, and maybe it's very appropriate to have such a building in one space, but not in another. Maybe we need a different building in this other space, but we cannot see it if you just compare the actual energy consumption numbers. We have to normalize that, and the appropriateness for the use is very important. So we have to find a way to normalize for the climate, and of course for the time of use. Some buildings are used just a couple of hours a day, others are 24 hours in use, and of course it's more intensive to have a longer time of use, and the same, the intensity of use, if there are just a few people walking through or it's a real dense area. So the common target, so the target is to find options to do this normalization of real life number, and I don't want to go in all the details, but I want to show you that it's very quick, it goes very complicated. But in the end, it's just the overall philosophy. You can do the same for heating, for electricity use, for electricity use of the tenant. You can do it for water, you can do it for waste, and you can do that for many different, in many different dimensions. So it's, Jane, it's not to read, it's just to have a nice picture. If I go more in detail, I want to explain with the example of heating, what does it mean to do normalization. Here for the case of heating, the starting point is always the measured consumption. Here in this case in kilowatt hours per square meter, in kilowatt hours per year for the building. That means you have the shift between the year, and you normalize that in an average value per year. And you start with this number. But now you look into the vacancy and you normalize the vacancy for the vacant space of total rental space by the total rental space. And so you get this correction factor in there, and you just say, okay, if it's not used, if it's vacant, you just have a certain share of energy use for heating. You won't do you won't do nothing. But here in this case, it's in our proposal in here. We say, okay, it might be 50%. So see it here, somewhere here. You find the somewhere in there, deep in such a formula, you find a number, and this is the critical number. This is the number we have to talk about. Is it 50 in a common work? Because Bengt might use 60 or Paul might use 40%, and suddenly nothing is comparable anymore. We have to agree, and this is not, in the end, it's not right or wrong. It's a kind of convention how to do it. And then we can normalize regarding vacancy, and then we go to the next step. We go to the climate, and there are different concepts to normalize for climate. You can do the heating degree days or some other concepts, but we have to agree on the concept, how to do it. And the proposal is to do it with heating degree days, to do this normalization, and then to go ahead and do it for the time of the use and the intensity of use. And in the end, you come to a corrected heating demand for the building, which is a performance characteristics of the building, but it's coming from the measured energy consumption, energy consumption for heating from the real existing building, and that's the basis to compare different buildings in different spots, and that's very important. That's very important for example, if you talk with portfolio holders, they have 200 buildings in their building stock, and they ask, okay, where should I start to do something? Where can I improve the performance easiest? But they have to, first of all, they have to have a level where they see and they can compare the different buildings. Otherwise, they are different, the location of the different buildings. That they have known before. They don't need us for that. Of course, in the end, you divide by the total rental floor space to have a relative number to normalize for the size of the building. That's clear. So what's next? This is just a starting point. There's a proposal on the table how to do this normalization in these 4 categories, and the idea is to bring that now into a draft report and to start discussion on that, because it's not a thing for us in Germany to develop this and to give it somewhere. It must be in the end the result of input from all over the world. It's clear that the same principles for this normalization are valid for water and waste, for example, as well. So the next steps are finalization of the first draft, and we will circulate that in the rating tool committee to get feedback and to have a draft we could use to discuss outside the GBC family. But then we could use it, this draft to discuss with other stakeholders, because it's also important that people from outside are accepting the way we are doing it, because in the end it allows us to bring together all the information from our existing building schemes and to normalize that and to come to a kind of, I would say, meta database where we have really solid information if we talk to other stakeholders, for example, in politics. So I would say, and this stage then is an open consultation where we invite people to contribute, but if they do not, it's their decision. After the open consultation, the idea is to publish the publication of a final protocol by World GBC and maybe by other supporting organizations. There are other so-called benchmarking organizations, but each of them are doing the normalization in a different way, like Greenprint or Green Rating or ISA or whomever. They all do it in a different way. So the information they are gathering, it's of no use outside of the particular benchmark platform. Thank you for your attention, and maybe it's not the elephant in the room anymore. Maybe it allows us to have more a wider view now and and to see more in the future. Thank you. The first one was if we have benefited from other work we have done before. You mean we here in the World GBC family? And
have you benefited from any other similar exercises?
Yes, of course. So the starting point wasn't a white sheet of paper. It was the way these benchmark platforms are handling this issue. And since they are all doing normalization, but none of them is doing it in a transparent way. So you don't know what they normalize within their platform. So that was the starting point. Okay, we found people who told us how they do it, and so we found options, and we see that it seems to be the proposal is a very solid and also applicable way to do it. I mean, it's not of help to have rocket science for doing something like normalization.
Applying this knowledge.
How are we going to apply it?
I mean, in the end, it's easy to apply this when we have the protocol and the agreement, or the existing building tool operators collecting information about real consumption data can use it and put it on top. And they know the information they have to collect in addition, because only if you know the vacancy number of the building, you can do the normalization. That's the reason why we need the protocol in advance, and then we can see if we can apply it on existing numbers in some databases. Sometimes it's possible, sometimes it's not possible, and it's the same thing for water. Of course, you don't use heating degree days for water. You need other ways to do this normalization, but it's exactly the same thinking to do it for water, and it's of the same importance than for energy.
Any other questions? Okay, Martin?
Yes, Dutch GBC. Like a couple of weeks ago, we launched our Dutch Green Building Benchmark, and there was also, you already mentioned, the ISA, and we have theory is doing his own thing, everybody is doing his own thing. What makes this different then? I think it's not really a technical question, a bit more an organizational question.
Yeah.
What's the benefit for the end user?
The benefit for the end user, first, it's not, we do not ask benchmark platforms to do it different in the future. Everybody can do whatever he does, and to add value to their customer. But if you have the protocol now, you know, maybe you need an additional information to collect, and you can use the same information you collected from the buildings to transfer that into a benchmark internationally with all the others. I think the value is really to have this the option for comparison internationally with the meta benchmark. And we have seen, so we were discussing, would it be helpful for World GBC to start to collect information from buildings? Yes, it would, but the effort to do it is maybe ways too high, and other people are doing this. They are doing this in a good way, and maybe not good enough. And so we want to give guidance how to collect the data, so which information is necessary, and how to bring it to how to normalize it, so it's ready to benchmark. And the idea of what we could do on World GBC side is to publish a meta benchmark coming out of different benchmarks. Today we cannot compare the benchmarks from ISA and Greenprint and Green Rating and so on, because they are normalized in a different way. So that's the added value.
So you're not intending to collect additional data?
No.
You're just trying to recalculate or merge different data?
That's right. We want to enable the ones collecting the data to present them in a way that they are comparable and they can be combined. Because, I mean, look at the ISA. There are many different types of buildings included there. For many of them, it's not really clear where the information comes from. It's also older data. And then you have a couple of use types where you have just a few buildings, shopping centers or whatever. They're not enough to have a really stable benchmark, and maybe it's in every platform. There are not enough buildings to have a stable benchmark. But if you put everything together, you get a stable benchmark because you have enough buildings in there. And I think this is the high potential of such an option. So the question was that one main influence is the climate, and if we need additional methodology to normalize for climate. I don't think we should develop a new methodology to do that. We should apply existing methodology. And the proposal here is to do it with the heating degree days. There you just have to know where your building is. And so you go in a map and say, okay, here this the climate is represented in this number, this amount of heating degree days or cooling degree days for electricity later on, and then you can directly apply it without having additional methodology developed. and it's tested and used. But maybe there are different options. We have to discuss that.
I think we'll close that one there. This is driven through the rating tool subcommittee. As with often detailed work like this, it gets primarily done within one GBC and then gets shared around the committee and then the committee input into it. If this is something that you are very interested in, please come and talk to Romley. Can you put your hand up? Who chairs this committee and potentially join this committee. So thank you, Johannes, for the, do you want to add something?
Yeah. One more thing I forgot to say. This is not primarily my work. It's the work of Peter Mösle from our council, who has done all the technical work, and he's sitting on the committee as well. So I'm just replacing him here to do the hard work of traveling to South Africa.